Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 2 of Podcasting 101 with Simone and Nicole. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm very grateful for your time. So thank you for tuning into this, and I hope that this is super helpful for you. This mini episode today is going to focus on one of the least glamorous sides of podcasting, but something that I get questions about 24/7. People are constantly asking me about this, so I was like, I need to do an episode on it. And I'm gonna be very candid and very transparent. I have notes sitting in front of me over here, and I've written these notes because I wanna make sure that I don't miss anything for you and that you have all of the information that you need while you're starting your show. So we're gonna be talking today about podcasting equipment, software, and setup. So I think that, before we dive into any of this, a lot of people will tell you that you need to have all of this equipment in order to start your podcast, that you need to have really good equipment to get going, that you have to have all of these different things. But I'm here to tell you that you don't need to have the best of the best, that that's not necessarily true. While you do need specific things and, different pieces of software and equipment will make your life a lot easier, you don't need all of this fancy stuff and to spend a ton of money, okay? So I just wanted to highlight that because when people say, you need the best software to record, I personally think that could not be further from the truth. So on that note, let's dive into equipment. There are 3 pieces of equipment that you need in order to start a podcast. So you need a computer, but you can also use a phone. For the purposes of this little mini series today, we're going to be talking about, using a computer. And throughout all of the series, we're going to be talking about recording on a computer because that's how I do it. You also need a mic, and you also need a pair of headphones. 3 basic things that you need to start your podcast, okay? There are so many different options of, mics that you can get. There's so many different things out there on the market. Questions on like, what kind of headphones do I need? What kind of computer do I need? What kind of software do I need? But really, you guys, it's all about what you can afford, what fits your budget, and what you've set, and as long as it goes in the boundaries of what you've set for yourself. You don't need all of this fancy stuff if you don't have the money for it, and that is okay. You can get started without having, the $800 mic, okay? So personally, in terms of equipment, I have a MacBook that I use to do my recordings. I used to do my editing. And I find that it's super easy, very streamlined to do it through there. I'll go through a little bit more if you're not a Mac user, what you can use. My headphones are here, I'll show you. My headphones are these ones. They go over my ears so I can hear the sound properly. I've recorded in the past with earbud type headphones, and I find that the sound isn't always quite as clear when you're editing. So I think that, that part is really important too. And the last thing would be, my mic. So I use a Blue Yeti mic. I think my fiance purchased it off of like Kijiji or something like that. And so while it's an incredible mic to use, there are ways to get your podcasting equipment a little bit less expensive because it can be a lot, and it does add up to be a lot if you're using or wanting the best of the best for everything. So if you have any questions, in terms of what type of mic you should get or what type of headphones you should use, what type of software, or is your computer like powerful enough, like that kind of stuff, feel free to send me a message. I'll do my best to respond. But yeah, I really think that, it's so easy to start out with simple pieces because ultimately the goal is to have a show that sounds really good. Sound quality in a podcast is like the most important thing. And you'll have people out there are tons of podcasters out there that don't care about the sound quality. They just want to record, the conversation and the moment. And while I think that is equally as important, sound quality is just something you just can't escape. Sound quality is what people are hearing in their headphones while you are, sharing your episode with them. And so if the quality of the sound isn't there, it's not going to really make a difference what people are talking about because your audience won't be able to hear it. They're going to get frustrated because all they're going to hear is like muffled sounds, crackling noises, things dropping off when, and then it just really makes the conversation frustrating to follow. So, setting up your space, which we're gonna dive into setting up in a second, but making sure that sound is so good. Even if it's a little echoey, like that's fine. It's more so just making sure that things are clear so people can hear what you're saying. Because ultimately you want people to share your show. You want people to rate and review your podcast. And so these are the contributing factors to the experience, right? Like we want to think about like the experience that we're providing for people when creating our show. What is that person going to hear? How are they going to enjoy your episode? What are they going to take away from it? Are they going to miss information because things cut off, or because sound was muffled, or because someone was talking too low and you can't pull it up, the volume up high enough? All of these little different things to consider. So what I would say is, like, especially when it comes to the sound, test it first on your end. Make sure that it is loud enough. Make sure that it is clear enough, because that is so important. So one of the last parts that I want to dive into is setup. So let's talk about your setup for a little bit. So you really want to position yourself in a place where the sound won't bounce around. So typically what we mean by this is like spaces that have carpets, things that have like spaces that have furniture. A lot of people will go into like a closet, because you're surrounded by sound that will absorb any noise bouncing off of it. I have never personally sat in a closet to do my show. I've more sort of dealt with the bouncing of the sound and trying to figure out how I can position my mic and like my space differently in order to avoid having to do that. But I think that, whatever works for you. I do video on my podcast too, so I don't really want videos of me like sitting in my closet talking to my guests, A lot of people will put like sound panels around their area too to like absorb some of the sound, which is really good. I think it's a really good trick if you have the space and you're able to do that 100%. So when it comes to the rest of your setup, obviously you're gonna have your computer or whatever you're using to record. You have your headphones, which are typically plugged into either your computer. Mine plug into my mic, and my mic is plugged into my computer, and I keep that setup the way that it is. I spent a lot of time setting up my mic and where it goes, how it's positioned and everything, so that I know every time I go to record something again in the future, I don't have to sit there and test it all over again. I can just trust that the sound is going to be good and it's going to be clear because I've already done that work to set it up in the beginning. Once you have it set up the way that you like, I really suggest that you don't move it afterwards. You're always going to be setting it up over and over again. So if you can afford to, at least just keep your computer and mic in the same place, or your mic in the same place. That will be so helpful and will save you so much more time as you're recording and potentially doing interviews and that kind of thing. Like, you don't really want to be spending all this time every time you're recording to reset up your mic, right? So that's just a pro tip. I think that if you have really good sound, keep that set up, because you're not going to have to worry so much about the output, and it's going to allow your sound, your output, to be very clear on a consistent basis. So I also think that it's a really good reminder here to remember how much time and energy that you're going to put into this part, right? Think about, if you're setting anything up and if you're going to spend time setting anything up, this would be the part, right? Because your audience is going to love your output so long as the sound is clear, and so long as the volume matches. If you have guests, you're going to want to match both of the voices together. And so, just think about these different things when you're setting up your podcast. Take the time to set up like your studio area properly, because it makes such a difference and it's so important. If you have any questions along the way, you just let me know. Just drop them in the comments here or send me a DM, no problem. The other thing and the last thing that I wanted to touch on is software needed. So we're going to dive into like specific platform hosts next week. But for this week, I really wanted to touch on some of the software that you're going to need while you're starting out. there's so many different things to cover in terms of like platforms, which is why I don't want to talk about it here today, because otherwise there's gonna be too much information to absorb. But the purpose of, for the purpose of getting your podcast up and running, there are specific, softwares that you do want to be aware of. The first one is your hosting platform. So I host on Libsyn, but again, we're going to be covering all of this next week. The second is, a way to, or a method to record interviews if you're doing interviews. I do them on Zoom, and in the past, before I was doing video, I did them on Zencaster. If you're doing a solo episode, you're just gonna record it directly in the place that you're gonna edit it in. And so on a Mac, we can use GarageBand, which is so convenient. So you can record right in there, and then you can edit right in there. And if you're on a PC, you can use Audacity, and you can use that for recording and for editing as well. So that's really, really great. It's similar to GarageBand. I don't find it as intuitive as GarageBand, but it's definitely a really, really good software, and it's free. So that's really important. And then lastly, we're gonna dive way into marketing in a different episode in the future. But I think one software to also keep in mind too is Headliner. Headliner is a platform that allows you to create snippets of your podcast once it's been exported, and you can use that for marketing. So it's very, very, very important to, have these sort of things like in place, so you think about holistically, how are you going to set up your show? How is it going to launch? What's it going to look like? What kind of things do you need from your final episode? Do you need sound clips? Like all of those kind of things. We're going to dive into all of those specifics in a future episode. But I just wanted to put Headliner on your radar. It's a great software, and it's really, really, really helpful in getting sound snippets. So it's really great. So I'm going to leave you with this, because I really think that less is more when it comes to equipment. There are so many different types of equipment that you can use, so many brands, so many types. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really know all of them. I just know what I like, and I know what works for me. And I think that that's like the biggest part, is just thinking about what you want and what works for you. And people always think that it needs to be perfect before it starts, but honestly, that could not be further from the truth. You're always gonna find a reason to not start, and you're always gonna find something else to add in that maybe, you could have added in at the beginning. Like if you're always just gonna find a reason for things to be more complicated than they need to be, especially when trying something new, especially when doing something that you're not really sure how to do it. But I think that simplicity is key. You don't need to go all out in terms of equipment, and start with what you have and then grow from there. So I think that's really, really, really key. Thank you so much for watching this episode on Podcasting 101 with Simone and Nicole. Please be sure to leave any comments in the comments. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, because this is going on my YouTube channel, don't forget to rate and review. Leave a comment, subscribe. Let me know if you love it. Let me know what you want to learn more of. And I will see you on the next episode.